Forget friendly ghosts and cardboard monsters. When the 1960s rolled around, horror went straight for your nerves and didn't let go. These movies didn't just scare a few thrill seekers, they scarred a generation for life. Why did these films leave grown adults double-checking the locks and kids swearing off basements for years? What kind of nightmares get burned into your memory forever? Let's just say, some doors once opened can never be closed. Ready to find out which cinematic nightmares changed the game? Psycho. Step into the Bates Motel, and you're checking into a cinematic experience that changed horror forever. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho didn't just push the envelope, it tore it to shreds and tossed the pieces into the shower drain. The infamous shower scene left audiences gasping for breath, not just because of the shock, but because it turned something as mundane as bathing into a terrifying event. Janet Leigh's petrified scream echoed through theaters, and suddenly, nobody felt safe behind closed doors anymore. Hitchcock's direction is relentless, the black and white visuals razor-sharp, and the tension practically suffocating. Norman Bates, with his boyish charm and chilling stare, became the poster child for psychological horror. Critics didn't know what hit them, and audiences couldn't stop talking about it. Psycho turned terror into an art form, making viewers everywhere reconsider every shadow and every strange smile. Even now, one trip to a lonely motel, and you'll remember exactly why this film traumatized an entire generation. The Haunting. Want to know the definition of dread? Try spending a night at Hill House. The Haunting isn't about cheap tricks or jump scares, it's about the walls closing in and your mind unraveling, frame by frame. Directed by Robert Wise, this adaptation of Shirley Jackson's novel is a masterclass in atmospheric horror. The house is alive with whispers, sighs, and strange chills, but the real terror lies in watching the characters slowly lose their grip on reality. The camera angles are dizzying, the lighting is ghostly, and every thump and creak sounds like a warning. Forget monsters hiding under the bed, the real monsters are the ones in your mind. Audiences left theaters shaken, wondering if they'd ever be able to trust their own senses again. The best part? The movie rarely shows you anything overtly supernatural, leaving your imagination to do all the heavy lifting. The Haunting didn't just scare people, it messed with their heads, and it still has the power to make you question every noise in the night. Rosemary's Baby. What happens when you can't trust the people around you, or even your own body? Rosemary's Baby took paranoia to new heights. Mia Farrow's haunting performance as a young woman trapped in a nightmare of manipulation and suspicion is the film's secret weapon. The movie dials up the anxiety with every slow pan and quiet conversation until the walls feel like they're closing in. You can practically taste the unease as Rosemary realizes she's surrounded by neighbors with secrets and a husband who's hiding something far darker than she ever imagined. Polanski's direction is all about slow burn tension, never letting you settle for a moment. By the time the truth starts to leak out, viewers were squirming in their seats, and many left the theater feeling like they'd just escaped a waking nightmare. It's not about monsters jumping out of closets, it's about the fear of losing control, and the idea that anyone could become your worst enemy. Night of the Living Dead. Before the world was overrun with shambling corpses on every screen, Night of the Living Dead arrived and shattered the horror playbook. George Romero's low-budget shocker was filmed in gritty black and white, giving it a raw, almost documentary feel that made the terror all too real. The story is simple. A group of strangers barricade themselves inside a farmhouse as the world outside collapses into chaos. But nothing about this movie is simple in practice. The tension inside the house boils over as quickly as the undead outside. Romero forced audiences to stare down the collapse of order, the fear of strangers, and the horror of facing the unimaginable with nowhere left to run. The ending hit viewers like a punch to the gut, and nobody left the theater the same. This wasn't just a monster movie, it was a revolution. Night of the Living Dead gave nightmares a new face, and it's one you'll never forget. The Birds. What if the things you see every day, quiet, harmless, maybe even a little boring, suddenly turned on you? Hitchcock's The Birds took a flock of feathery creatures and transformed them into an unstoppable force of terror. There's no rhyme or reason, no warning, and no mercy. The attack scenes are so relentless and chaotic, they make you question the safety of your own backyard. Tippi Hedren's terrified eyes and desperate escapes turned her into a horror icon, while the eerily silent stretches of film wound the tension tighter and tighter. People left theaters covering their heads, afraid to look up at the sky. The genius of this movie is that it took something familiar and made it alien and menacing. For years, a simple chirp outside a window was enough to send shivers down the spine. The birds didn't just traumatize its generation, it changed the way people saw the world around them. Peeping Tom. Sometimes the scariest monsters don't wear masks. They hide in plain sight, behind the lens. Peeping Tom shocked British audiences like a slap across the face. Michael Powell, previously celebrated for lush dramas, pulled the rug out from under everyone with this unsettling story of a quiet cameraman whose obsession with watching turns lethal. Audiences weren't just disturbed, they were outraged, and critics tried to bury the film. But that only made it more notorious. Peeping Tom invites you into the mind of a killer and dares you to keep watching, even as every scene gets creepier. It's a movie about the fear of being watched, of losing privacy, and of what happens when curiosity goes too far. Today, it's recognized as a psychological horror masterpiece, proof that sometimes the act of looking can be as scary as any monster in the shadows. Eyes without a face. Imagine waking up and not recognizing the face in the mirror, or worse, knowing someone else's face might be next. Eyes Without a Face took European audiences to a whole new level of dread. The story of a brilliant but deranged surgeon, desperate to repair his daughter's ruined beauty, shocked viewers with its poetic style and moments of raw, clinical terror. The haunting mask worn by the daughter, emotionless and ghostly, became a symbol of horror that lingered long after the credits rolled. The surgical scenes, handled with a cold precision, had people squirming in their seats, while the atmosphere left a lasting sense of unease. This was a horror film that didn't just scare, it unsettled, it fascinated, and it convinced people that true horror is sometimes the lengths people will go for love. Carnival of Souls. Sometimes the scariest experiences are the ones you can't explain away. Carnival of Souls is proof that you don't need a big budget or flashy effects to mess with someone's mind. This indie classic follows a church organist who, after surviving a car accident, finds herself haunted by strange figures and a feeling she doesn't quite belong. The film feels like a waking nightmare, with eerie locations, dreamlike pacing, and a constant sense that something is just off. Audiences left theaters feeling like they'd been hypnotized, and the movie's final twist haunted them long after. Carnival of Souls is less about jump scares and more about creeping dread, the sense that reality is just out of reach, and you can never really come home again. The Innocence. There's nothing quite as unnerving as children who seem to know more than they should. The Innocence plays that idea for every ounce of fear it can squeeze. Deborah Kerr delivers a tour-de-force performance as a governess tasked with caring for two strange children in a remote mansion. As ghostly visions and unsettling events pile up, the line between sanity and the supernatural blurs to the point of no return. The film's gothic style is gorgeous but loaded with tension, using shadow and silence as weapons. Every whisper, every flicker of movement in the corner of the frame is enough to send chills racing up your spine. Is it all in her head, or is something truly haunting that house? The answer doesn't matter. What counts is the journey, and The Innocence drags viewers straight into the heart of psychological horror. Village of the Damned. Lock the doors and hide the kids. These children aren't here to play. Village of the Damned is a cold slice of British horror that flips innocence on its head. After a mysterious blackout, every woman in a quiet English village gives birth to a child with glowing eyes and icy intelligence. The children don't cry, they don't laugh, and they don't lose. What starts as strange quickly becomes terrifying, as the children reveal they can control minds and destroy lives with a glance. The film tapped into every parent's secret fear. What if your child wasn't yours at all, but something utterly alien? Audiences left the cinema with a new set of nightmares and a deep suspicion of playgrounds everywhere. Village of the Damned is a masterclass in turning the familiar into pure terror. Black Sunday. If you thought classic horror couldn't get brutal, Black Sunday was here to prove you wrong. Mario Bava's gothic masterwork opens with one of the most unforgettable scenes of the era, an iron mask hammered onto a witch's face, setting the tone for 90 minutes of pure dread. It's a tale of revenge, curses, and the undead, all filmed in shimmering black and white that feels like something conjured straight from a nightmare. Barbara Steele's dual performance is haunting, her eyes promising both danger and heartbreak. In Italy, the film's intense visuals were so shocking, it got banned in several places. In America, it was trimmed down, but but even then, nobody could escape its chilling spell. Black Sunday didn't just terrify, it left audiences obsessed, debating what they'd just witnessed. Bava didn't pull punches, and neither did this movie's legacy. Repulsion. Welcome to the slowest descent into madness you'll ever witness. Roman Polanski's Repulsion traps you inside the crumbling mind of Catherine Deneuve's troubled heroine. The movie takes place almost entirely within her apartment, but the claustrophobia is so intense you'll feel like the walls are pressing in on you too. Hallucinations blur into reality, hands reach from the walls, and the sound of a ticking clock becomes a weapon of psychological warfare. Audiences were left stunned, not by gore, but by how deeply the movie gets under your skin. Every cracked tile and every flickering light feels like a warning. Repulsion made people look twice at their own homes and question their own minds. It's a film that doesn't just scare, it sticks with you, reminding you that sometimes the worst place to be is alone with your thoughts. Quaidon. Horror can be beautiful, and Quaidon is proof. This Japanese anthology film transforms traditional ghost stories into mesmerizing works of art. Each segment is painted in vivid color and rich detail, from snowbound spirits to the chilling sound of a samurai's regrets. But don't let the beauty fool you. The tales are loaded with sorrow and dread, and the spirits don't care how polite you are. For Western audiences in the 60s, Quaidon was an introduction to a whole new way of being scared. Atmospheric, poetic, and totally unnerving. Critics raved, but the real impact was on viewers who left the theater feeling like they'd wandered through someone else's dream and realized they might never wake up. House of Usher. No list of 60s horror is complete without Vincent Price, and House of Usher is him at his brooding, operatic best. Based on Edgar Allan Poe's dark tale, this movie turns a family curse into a spectacle of fiery dread. The Usher mansion creaks and moans, every shadow hiding some unspeakable secret. Roger Corman's direction is all about the atmosphere, cobwebs, echoes, and that sense of a building ready to swallow everyone whole. Price brings tragic weight to his role, balancing elegance with madness. Audiences were glued to their seats, terrified not just of what would happen, but of the creeping sense of doom hanging over every scene. House of Usher proved you don't need buckets of blood to leave people trembling. You just need the right kind of madness. Black Sabbath. 3 tales, 1 legend. Black Sabbath, directed by Mario Bava and hosted by the great Boris Karloff, is the horror anthology that left audiences wide-eyed and whispering. Each story delivers its own brand of terror, from a deadly phone call to a vengeful vampire. But it's the final tale, about a nurse tormented by a corpse, that really pushed viewers over the edge. Bava's use of color, lighting, and sound is masterful, trapping you in a world where danger lurks in every corner. The film's structure was so influential, it helped shape the future of horror anthologies. In Italy, Black Sabbath was a sensation. In America, it gained cult status. And for every viewer, it was a reminder that sometimes the scariest stories come in threes. Spiderbaby, welcome to the wildest family reunion you'll ever witness. Spiderbaby is the movie that dares you to laugh right before it makes you want to scream. Lon Chaney Jr. stars as the caretaker of the Merry clan, a group of siblings afflicted by a mysterious condition that turns them into childlike, dangerous predators. The film plays like a demented fairy tale, with bizarre dinners, booby-trapped houses, and an offbeat sense of humor that only makes the horror hit harder. Released in the late 60s, but feeling ahead of its time, Spiderbaby was too weird for the mainstream, but it quickly became a cult favorite. Anyone who's seen it will tell you, there's no forgetting the grinning, wide-eyed faces or the chilling ending that proves family secrets are sometimes better left buried. Dementia 30s. Before he made epics, Francis Ford Coppola dipped his toes into the dark waters of horror with Dementia 13 and delivered a story as sharp as an axe. A family gathers in a gloomy Irish estate to honor a lost child, but secrets start bubbling to the surface, and soon, so does the body count. Coppola's knack for tension is on full display, using shadows, silence, and sudden violence to keep the audience off balance. The film's dreamlike pacing and bursts of intensity made it stand out among its peers, and its raw, unpolished feel only adds to the creeping dread. Dementia 13 proved you didn't need a blockbuster budget to get under people's skin, just the right amount of mystery, mood, and mayhem. The Mask. Forget 3D blockbusters. The Mask was blowing minds with hallucinatory visuals long before the tech was cool. This Canadian shocker hands you a pair of 3D glasses and dares you to put them on whenever the cursed mask appears. What follows is a swirl of surreal visions, shrieking faces, and pulsating lights that left audiences feeling genuinely shaken. The story follows a psychiatrist tormented by the mask's visions, and as the lines between fantasy and reality blur, so does your grip on what's actually happening. The Mask didn't just scare people, it broke the fourth wall, turning the audience into participants in the nightmare. For a generation raised on black and white horror, this was like being shot into another dimension. The Curse of the Werewolf. When Hammer Studios turned their sights on werewolves, they unleashed a monster for the ages. The Curse of the Werewolf stars Oliver Reed as the doomed Leon, cursed from birth and haunted by a transformation that's both tragic and terrifying. The film drips with atmosphere, crumbling castles, moonlit streets, and villagers whispering about old legends. But the real shock comes when Leon's curse erupts, and Reed delivers a performance equal parts agony and rage. For many, this was the definitive werewolf movie of the decade, and the transformation scenes had audiences gripping their seats. Hammer's lush colors and gothic mood ensured that the nightmares lingered long after the credits rolled. The Curse of the Werewolf showed that sometimes the beast inside is scarier than any villain you meet in the dark. The Flesh and the Fiends. History meets horror in The Flesh and the Fiends, a film that turns real-life grave robbers into monsters you won't soon forget. Donald Pleasance delivers a chilling performance as the ambitious Dr. Knox, whose thirst for medical progress turns a blind eye to the bodies piling up around him. The true stars, though, are the murderous duo of Burke and Hare, men willing to do anything for a quick payday. The film's grimy streets, flickering candlelight, and relentless sense of doom create an atmosphere thick with fear. But what really got under people's skin was the realization that the darkest stories are sometimes pulled straight from history. The Flesh and the Fiends reminded audiences that horror doesn't need ghosts or monsters. Sometimes, it just needs desperate people and a world willing to look the other way. So there you have it. 20 films that didn't just scare audiences, but burned themselves into pop culture nightmares. These weren't just movies. They were rites of passage for a generation that learned to fear shadows, mirrors, and sometimes even their own reflection. Which one haunted you the most? Drop your memories in the comments, hit that like if you survived, and subscribe for more journeys into cinema's darkest corners. After all, in horror, there's always something waiting for you just around the next reel.